Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another Kung Fu Talk, your favorite martial arts podcast. I hope so. Before starting our show, as usual, please, I'd like to ask you like, comment, subscribe, criticize. I don't care, as long as you engage in this social media platform. We're on YouTube and also on Spotify. And before we start, also, the show is sponsored. Now we start being sponsored by Fei Long Design Hub, which is a martial arts printing. So we are on Amazon, Redbubble, TeePublic, and Etsy. If you like any kind of martial arts style graphic tees, like designs, T-shirts, hoodies, phone cases, mugs. So make sure you check it out. There's many different styles: Kung Fu, Wing Chun, Tai Chi, Muay Thai, Hapkido, Karate, Taekwondo. There's a really cool designs over there. I'll be adding the link in the subscription of this video. Uh, they are be able to ship many different countries all over Europe, France, Germany, United States, Canada, and so on. Make sure you go over there and check it out. And today is such an honor to have here Sifu Brian. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much, and thanks for having me here.
It's an honor to have you here. As we were chatting before, how many times I've been looking through kung fu techniques, videos, and the first thing that YouTube pop up, it's your videos. It's been such a long time. It's an honor to nowadays having this conversation with you, having a conversation about your background, about something your passion, your love, which is Chinese martial arts in general, right? Um, can you share a little bit about your personal background and how you become interested into martial arts?
Sure. So I currently study and teach Choy Lee Fut Kung Fu and Yang style Tai Chi. I've been doing both for over 20 years now. I've actually been teaching now for 20 years. And I got interested when I was a teenager and watched some Bruce Lee movies. It was, I wanted to do martial arts. I wanted to be strong like him, and it had to be Kung Fu. I was not going to take anything else. And there was no Kung Fu school in the town that I grew up in. We did have karate and some Taekwondo, and I did try karate when I was very young, but it just wasn't the right time. It just wasn't the right time for me. But I did have friends that did martial arts, and one of them suggested to look into the nearest city to me, which was Reno, Nevada. And they had a reputable Kung Fu school. And even then, there wasn't that many different types of Kung Fu, because if there was Wing Chun, I probably would have taken that, because that was, what Bruce Lee did. And of course, if there was Jeet Kune Do, then end of story, I would have just done that. But I ended up calling up this Kung Fu school, and I went in, did an introductory lesson. And when I walked into the school, they had this huge area. There was a bunch of weapons along the back wall. They had wall bags, a wooden dummy, the hanging punching bags. And it just had that look, that feel. And everything seemed right. It had the couplets, the past masters. And then when I did the lesson, I had a very, very good instructor, very professional, very motivating, and just a very nice person. And I was hooked. I didn't really look anywhere else after that, and it took me a couple months to realize that I was doing Choy Lee Fut Kung Fu. I didn't really know the style at first. To me, it's all, Kung Fu is Kung Fu. It's just general. So before I figured that out, it was great. But then afterwards, it just kind of went from there. And the nice thing about being in Reno was it was few hours drive to San Francisco, and there were schools in between to my Sigong, or my Grandmaster's school. So I had access to him for seminars. We hosted him every year. There were schools in Sacramento that hosted him, and then he would host his own seminars. So I would be able to go and see and work with him upwards of 3 times a year. And I kept getting hooked. I would go to tournaments and banquets and anything that was going on, and I just loved it. And of course, watching more movies and seeing more Kung Fu culture just inspired me. And when in 2003, actually it was much later. In 2007, I was able to get my black sash equivalent, or my ranking for black sash in the Reno school, and then at that point, I had finished up with college, and the job that I was at during that time that I worked throughout college, it was between working at a lumber yard and then teaching martial arts. And I didn't want to continue with the lumberyard. It just didn't seem the profession. I just wanted to stick with it. And I had finished up with school, so I thought, okay, this is a good time to maybe go explore more martial arts training. Maybe I'll just go train for the summer, and then I'll focus on what I'm going to do the rest of my life. So I emailed I emailed the son of Grandmaster, Jason Wong. He was the Sifu at the school at the time, and I emailed him and asked if I could come out and train. And he had seen me from seminars. I attended his seminars as well, and he knew me as an instructor in the school that I was at. So he pretty much was very straightforward, and he said, "Well, our program director is leaving. Do you have experience in this, and would you like to just come and work?" And I was like, "Yep, sounds good." So packed everything up, moved to San Francisco, and never looked back. I mean, just started from the moment I drove into town. I still had things in the back of my car and just went straight to the school. Worked my first day, taught my first day, and then I went and found the place I was renting and spent the rest of the time there. I mean, I was there in San Francisco for 10 years, and then I moved to Switzerland, and now I'm here.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I've always knew that you were from some part of Europe. I wasn't sure if it was Sweden or Switzerland, but that's impressive. So, where exactly, if you don't mind me to ask, you were here in San Francisco?
When I was in San Francisco, over in the Sunset District, because I know you're in San Francisco now, right?
Yeah, I'm in Inner Sunset right now. I'm living in Inner
In your
Sunset.
Sunset.
Yeah.
Oh, no
Yeah.
way. Yeah. So the first place I moved to was over in Ingleside off of Ocean Avenue. And then I progressively got closer and closer to the school because the school was on 19th and Terraville. It has since moved. It's actually further up the street. It's on 15th and Terraville now. But yeah, I used to, I mean, I lived for a good few years. I lived like a block away on 20th Avenue. So
That's nice. Yeah, when I first came here, I came in 2021 from Miami, so it was a shock. And after
yeah.
pandemic, yeah, I came to live in downtown, like a couple blocks away from maybe 3 blocks away from Tenderloin. So for me, that was
Oh,
very,
wow.
it was
That's
very nice.
insane. Yeah, I had a girlfriend that lived over just above the Tenderloin, and when I would be done teaching at the end of the night, it'd be like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, we'd go get dinner or whatever, and then just to head over to that direction and park. It was like, and San Francisco, you're like parking blocks and blocks away. And at that time, I had a manual transmission too, so I got really good at parallel parking and doing the emergency brake. Rev up the engine, let off the clutch, and then let it out so you can get out without bumping anybody. But man,
Wow,
but now you're Inner Sunset, huh?
yeah, I'm actually walking distance through the UCSF hospital.
Okay,
Uh,
yeah,
yeah,
awesome.
right in front of the Golden Gate Park. How many times I used to now I have a big backyard, but when I was living in downtown, I used to come to Golden Gate Park just to practice, and then eventually got my place. I mean, it's not my place, but a place where I rent to teach
Yeah,
martial
yeah.
arts. But yeah, but it's nice. It's impressive that you live here, and that's cool. Yeah,
I
they have.
know.
I used to say that San Francisco is a martial arts city in the United States because there's so many good schools, many good masters, great lineage. It's impressive, and especially being close to Chinatown. We love kung fu, we love the Chinese culture, we love everything related to martial arts, and that's nice. And another thing that I want to touch base is about it's impressive that 90 to 99% of the people that are talking about martial arts, the first reference is Bruce Lee. It doesn't matter, I've been talking with even friends on group chats with different martial arts from jiu-jitsu karate is first thing it's Bruce Lee, and it's impressive how Bruce Lee in a good way he influenced and still influencing many people to nowadays.
Yeah, for sure. He was huge inspiration for so many people and in so many different ways. And I think what's cool, especially being in the martial arts and kind of seeing things from my own martial arts and how they've evolved over time, my perspective of not only martial arts, but of Bruce Lee and how he shaped his Jeet Kune Do really has changed over the years. And I've taken greater appreciation to kind of his ideas behind the scene, not just the techniques of the art and the principles and the forward, the theories and everything, but just being able to transmit an art, transmit your own experience in a standardized, I have to say in air quotes, standardized fashion, because I know there was a little more flexibility in how he taught as compared to what we teach in traditional martial arts. But the theory and behind what's behind it should still remain. We should still seek efficiency, and we should be seeking adaptation and finding what works. But of course, there's a base level to that. And I think that's what I started with, was like, oh, this technique works. This one didn't work for me once. I'm going to throw it out. And then now at this level, kind of seeing where would this technique work? What's the context of it? What are the conditions that have to be present for a technique to work? And seeking to find how we can adapt and work with it, rather than just completely discarding it from a single experience. So yeah, it's so yeah. But again, it just goes back to like, yeah, I watched the Chinese Connection and I was hooked.
That's nice. One thing that I like to summary about Jeet Kune Do, if I could summary in one simple word, would be adaptability. And this is something that we see in any style of martial arts. That's why I like to say there's no better martial arts. There's better martial artists. People who actually put their work and practice hard and make it through and make it useful for any type of combat or anything. Doesn't matter, regardless if it's a competition point sparring or if it's for self-defense purpose. And this concept that Bruce Lee brought actually spread to the world about the adaptability, creating the Jeet Kune Do, evolving from traditional Kung Fu martial arts, not discarding the credibility of traditional martial arts, but giving more credibility, because everybody, as I said, like 90% of the people that I talk about is oh yeah, because I watched Bruce Lee, because I played this video game, because everything was related to him, and it's beautiful. And one thing that I like to share, like my Sifu Harden is saying that I practice Jeet Kune Do with. I remember when I participated in his first seminar, it was impressive because like you don't have to stop practicing traditional kung fu to be good in Jeet Kune Do. You just have to understand the adaptability point of how using your martial arts to evolve in a sense where you're going to be start separating your tools and better using for your better condition according to your body, to your fighting experience. Don't imitate Bruce Lee, make your own Jeet Kune Do experience, right?
That's it.
And of course, we still have the boundaries. You're not going to be doing jiu-jitsu or Muay Thai and calling Jeet Kune Do. We still have, the techniques, proper techniques to be called Jeet Kune Do, but you still use your background to develop your kung fu and make it useful. It's impressive.
Oh yeah. I agree completely. And the way that you bring that up too, it's really important that in the beginning, of course, and especially we know this as instructors, but we're doing something that has been standardized, and that's something, like I kind of mentioned, this is something I've been exploring and understanding more lately, is transmitting what our thoughts, our ideas on combat are. And when you have to standardize it, you do have to make things a little bit awkward. So in the beginning, things are going to be, when students train, they're not doing their kung fu, they're doing the past master's kung fu, they're doing their Sifu's kung fu. They have to fit the mold to a certain point. And then when they become better acquainted with the techniques, better acquainted with the stances, the footwork, the body mechanics, the strikes, the kicks, all of that, when they start understanding the essence of each technique and motion, then they can actually begin taking that art and making it a part of themselves, and then making the art basically their own version of the art. And that's when it's most efficient. So I think you hit the nail on the head right there. That's a very important aspect of it.
Absolutely. And as you said, everybody when you start a different martial arts, especially when it comes about traditional martial arts, Chinese traditional martial arts, you don't know what you're doing. You just think that it's kung fu is something general, like it's standard. Like, if I practice jujitsu right now, for me, one part, the graces are no different from any other different master, but it's not like that. Like you see Choy Li Fut, Hun Kyu, Wing Chun, and many different systems into traditional martial arts. And then you start developing the techniques and understanding what each style is about. Even that is the same style as Kung Fu, but different lineage, thoughts, philosophies, and body motions as well. And it's beautiful how you express the philosophy through martial arts, through body motion expression as well. And that's, I think that's something that Bruce Lee wants to touch and spread to the world, doesn't matter regardless the art, and how you express yourself better. Because again, you can standardize it. I mean, you have a style that been developed and studying for centuries. It's not somebody that just woke up and created something, but it's impressive how someone was very intelligent through the 80s, 70s, 60s, and just simply start studying philosophy and his own experience to martial arts, and develop and evolve something so beautiful as a martial arts. I would say, I mean, he probably had influences of many great martial arts back then, but he didn't have the technology that we have nowadays. And look at how, the beautiful system he created. It's impressive.
It is. It truly is.
Choy Li Fut is known for its combination of circular and linear movements. Please correct me if I am wrong. How would you describe its core principles to someone unfamiliar with it?
So the best way that I would describe Choy Lee Fut is that it is one of the quintessential styles. Like when you picture Kung Fu in your head, this is one of the things that you picture. It has the low stances, the wide stances. It has a lot of large circular sweeping movements. It does have straight punches, and I know a lot of people, when they try to describe Choy Li Fut, they say, oh, well, Choy Li Fut is only circular punches. Wing Chun is straight line. It has both. But then also Choy Li Fut has a big emphasis on forms. So very similar to what you would think of from Shaolin. It has the animal forms. You have your tiger, dragon, leopard, snake, crane. And in fact, there's 10 animals total. So on top of that, there's horse, tiger cub, lion, elephant, and monkey. And then there's just no mantis. That's a separate art. But there's also a drunken form. There's Buddha palm form. There's a bunch of different Chinese weapons, the traditional weapons that you usually expect to see: swords, spears, long pole arms, and of course staffs, 3-section staff, 2-section staff, chain whips, and then some very obscure weapons too, like a rake, the 9-tooth rake, the farmer's hoe, horse bench, so just a regular bench. And it's like kind of when people think of like Jackie Chan too, they're like, oh, you can make a weapon out of everything. And it's kind of been a Kung Fu tradition, and we can see this in styles too, like Choy Li Fut. Also, Hong Kune does it as well, so it's not like it's all exclusive to Choy Li Fut. But I think it's a very vast martial art, and the best way to see it is, again, large techniques, low stances, and a very big emphasis on waist power. So using your hips, using your waist rotation to generate power.
One thing that I like to say is it's beautiful to see how Choy Li Fut grow through the years. I would say I was talking to Sifu Javier. He's from Miami in one of our Kung Fu talks, and according to him, Choy Li Fut's the style that has most practitioners around the world into Kung Fu. And it's a very powerful system, and we see through the movies. I remember when I was watching the first time, the Drinking Master, and there was this debate between Jackie Chan. They're like, oh, you have to practice Choy Li Fut because Choy Li Fut is more powerful. They were trying to impress this girl, and Jackie Chan, no, he was trying to be humble, but at the same time with his drinking fist, and it's beautiful. It's amazing.
Oh yeah, and it's interesting. You mentioned that you saw it in the Drunken Master, how he's like, oh, you should use Choy Li Fut, it's more practical. Yeah. A lot of people, actually, even myself, I didn't pick up that reference for a while, and I actually studied the art because it was like they used kind of a mix of the Mandarin name Choy Lee Fut
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
the Cantonese name Choy Lee Fut. They kind of they mixed them both together, and I think he called it Choy Lee Fut or something like that. But
Yes.
at first I was like, I don't know what he's talking about, but it looks like what I do.
Mhm. Yeah, it's impressive style. It's impressive how, we have very good representatives, people who like you, like, have doing such a great job in spreading their art and honoring the
Thanks.
name of the tradition. And it's beautiful, it makes us, martial artists, what they call, give us more and more strength to continue our work regardless of the style, regardless if it's a different style. But we all working for the same cause to spread the word, impact the people's in a good way, people's life in a good way, and help us to motivate our work. It's really nice. Congrats.
Yeah,
25
it's
is, sorry, go ahead.
no, that's fine. That's fine. Please.
No, yeah, 25 is the style with the most practitioners nowadays, as I mentioned. In your opinion, why would you attribute this fact?
Well, it's interesting now. I would say that I think there's probably we've been overtaken by Wing Chun at this point, thanks to the Ip Man movie franchise. But Choy Li Fut was actually it is a very very popular style of martial arts. I think because of its effectiveness in combat and its versatility as far as or its variety of forms. I think that gave it the jump on a lot of martial arts or a lot of traditional martial arts. And I think when we look back a couple of generations, you can see where this art really excelled and almost I don't want to say it was ahead of its time. I would say in certain things. In particular, when you look at power generation and training methods that's within the forms, these are things that you see people doing nowadays in movement and mobility training and even combat sports. So the emphasis of waist rotation, emphasis of relaxed power, tensing up just before hitting your target and then following through. These concepts were not as available to everybody in the past. So in earlier schools, you would have people that would excel at one part of the art or another, whether it be good, particular structure or good straight line strikes or this or that. But Choy Li Fut, whether they knew it or not, when they, as the masters perpetuated the system, they developed a really good athletic coordinating art that develops and maximizes the power that we can develop for ourselves, like without any additional things, without weight training or things like that. And that's not to say that they didn't do weight training, but just purely using your own body to generate power, they learned how to maximize it and make it just as potent as possible, as best to your own potential before introducing things like weights and weapons and things like that to develop the muscular side. And then, of course, they do have long forms in the system, which develop good cardio. And it's all about that explosive power with these long forms. So you are kind of mimicking good shadow boxing, like you're almost in a fight. So you're not going to gas out that way. I mean, they weren't, I've never heard emphasis in my readings and talking to like my Sigong and hearing about his teachers. I've never heard of anybody like going out for a run. So there were other ways that they were developing cardio. Now, of course, we're at a time where these methods and these thoughts and these ideas have been shared throughout the martial arts community. So it's not so special anymore. And I think, but at one time, Choy Li Fut was a front runner in certain areas, and I think that's what gave it an advantage on the combat side. Also on the forms side, between coordination and dexterity building and cardio, like I said, you also have within, like I mentioned, the weapons forms, within the specialty forms, the animal styles. You have certain things that can they're really nice to watch, and they can easily translate over into like Chinese opera. So the reason why I say this too is not just because we have like a monkey staff form or a general guando, like we don't have, just because we have a guando form and there's some acting in it, that's not saying that, oh, now it's translatable. I would say it because it's not just the main characters that you hear about, like the Monkey King or General Guan Yu. It's about like Pigsy and the Nine-Tooth Rake. So we have the Nine-Tooth Rake form. I actually have a video on my YouTube channel, and it's if people are listening to this or watching this, and you see that video, watch for the hand changes. It's actually, I consider it one of the more advanced weapons in the system. It doesn't have any acting in it, but it's got a lot of hand changes, a lot of spins that you're doing back to back, a lot of balance positions that require good fundamentals and a good understanding of all of that. And so having like Pigsy or secondary character, having like the monk's spade in relation to the Sandy monk from Journey to the West, and conversely, like if you look at the gik or the halberd, that is like the weapon of Lu Bu in the Three Kingdoms. There's also a long-handled broadsword similar to Guando, and it is that's the Choy Do, and that was Choy was one of the generals that Guan Yu fought when he was going through the 5 checkpoints in the Romance of the Three Kingdoms. So this and a lot of flashy movements, some acting, and just having this direct relation, and of course Snake Tongue Spear, I can't forget, for Zhang Fei. All of these things, I think, were made to be translatable over into if somebody wanted to pursue, entertainment as well, and doing it through like Chinese opera. So I think it became very established as this very, it's very versatile art in that respect. So I think that really helped. And then other than that, diaspora. I mean, as soon as there was after the Boxer Rebellion and after, going in, like it made its name for itself during those rebellion years, but moving through where you got into the Cultural Revolution, there were a lot of people that fled China, that went to Hong Kong or further. I think that's truly when Choy Lee Fut kind of was forced out into the world. And because of that, it continued to push out further and further. And to be honest, I think the art itself may have had further reach if it didn't have, if it didn't have its name, if it had more of an easier name to relate to the art. Because if you talk to people that are non traditional Chinese martial artists, they rarely know what Choy Lee Fut is. I mean, even if you call it Cai Li Fut or Choy Li Fut, they usually don't know. But if you were to say something like Southern Fist or something like that, then they have a clearer idea of what it is. So I think there's some things that just because it's a little bit different to pronounce, harder to say, and I've seen that it actually even here in Switzerland, and the way I'm on the French side of the country, and it's really hard to say a lot of these Cantonese names and terms, especially if they're reading them. They when they see the CH, they don't want to say Choy, they want to say Shoy. And then just, you have to add extra things. You have to, I think you put a TCH just so they get the ch sound on it.
Wow. It's impressive. And it's nice how the culture itself, it's into the art as well. As you mentioned, many different names, things that sometimes you see through video games, through movies and stuff, like you say, General Guan Yu, Lu Bu, and such a thing. And it's a nice way to picture the art as well when, especially teenagers or kids or watching the movie as an adult, and you can see the reference. Oh, wait a minute, this weapon is from my style, that form, that guy actually invented, or he was part of the lineage, or he was actually, created the form, or he was inspired by such a thing. So to promote the art, and that's a very nice, what's it called? That's a very nice comparison. How would you balance preserving the tradition aspect of Choy Li Fut while making it relevant for modern practitioners?
So preserving the art it's a difficult thing. So it's something where now we're looking at cultural ties to the art and keeping a culture alive. So when people learn it, it's for more than just fighting techniques or more than just self defense techniques these days. It's there's so much culture within it, and like we were just talking about with like references to Three Kingdoms, references to Journey to the West, just simple things, certain hand positions, certain postures, and things like that. These are direct ties to the culture, and I've seen just recently, actually, there was something that I had known for a very specific position. It's an arms raised position. It's in the beginning of the form. You raise your arms, you raise your leg, and then you kick. And this position is called foising tat dao. And I've always known it. I've known the name since the very first form that I learned it in. And I don't know exactly when I learned the translation for it, but it wasn't too much later after that I learned that it's something like, the scholar kicks the basket or something like that. But it made no sense to me. There was no connection further from that point. And it wasn't until just within the last year or two that I made the actual true connection to what this scholar kicking the basket is. And that was when I was working on my kicking book. And in fact, this is the position. If you're watching, you can see right here. This is the hand, one hand up, one hand down in a kicking position. And basically, the story behind this is back in the conception of the art. It's in the late Ming and into the Qing dynasty at this point. And in those days, they were still doing exams for people to get government positions. So people would pray to the gods to get a good mark on the exams so they could get a good job and be set for life, make good money, support their family, all of these things. So there was a legend about a man who was very, very smart and at the same time very, very ugly. So he was so hideous that nobody wanted to be around him, nobody wanted to be his friend, and it was pretty sad. But he was incredibly smart. And when he took the exams, he passed the highest out of anybody. And one of the things is when you take the imperial exams, whoever scores the highest was given, I believe, a golden flower as like a symbol, it's maybe gold-plated flower to symbolize that they had achieved this like first place award. And it was given by the emperor. Well, when he went to receive that, the emperor saw how ugly he was and exclaimed at how hideous he was, and it really embarrassed him. And so he ended up deciding that he was going to end his life. He went to the bridge in town and went to jump off into the water. And the legend goes that a water dragon brought him up to the sky, and he became a star. He ascended and became a star. So in Chinese culture, the constellations have a lot of ties to these things. And he became the tip of the Big Dipper constellation. So again, we have like relation to 7 stars. You hear that a lot in traditional martial arts, but then also he became that star. And because he was so smart and passed the imperial exam so well, people would pray to him. And rather than just drawing a star for like a statue or an altar, they have a picture of this ugly looking guy with his arm up and down, and he's kicking a basket. I still don't know how the basket fits into all of this, but it goes back to like, this is what they mean by that position. And now we have like a connection back to this very obscure reference that at the time, everybody knew Foising and his image of raising the leg. So this would be, and this is, I've explained this a couple of times, and the best way that I can say it is if you know American football and there's the Heisman Trophy and the guy, he's got his arm out. If you were to say at this time and you say it to people and you're like, oh, it's Heisman, and then they know they would reach an arm out or pull a hand back. But who knows? In 200 years, nobody's going to know who Heisman was and what this trophy was. So they're going to be like, they could look back on references to the, the 2000s and the 1900s and be like, oh yeah, there was this Heisman, and maybe they'll get the reference. So, catching things like that is pretty neat, but then it's also really important. I mean, I think that having an understanding of what's behind the name of a strike.
Mm.
I mean, that one's obscure, but just understanding when we talk about the terms, Choy, Choy you hear for all the fist positions, chap Choy, gua Choy, so Choy, Pao Choy, and you can also call it Zhong. But Choy is fist, but it's not a direct translation meaning fist. It means hammer, like when you have the melon hammers. So that is to kind of represent the hand itself should be as solid and as dense as like an iron hammer, that when you're doing chop choy, it should be really, really compact and really, really strong. And that comes to another thing too, just like pronunciation, because if you say choy, it's the correct thing. You say choy, it's wrong. And a lot of people will say that just because it's how they read it. And instead of saying like a hammer, they're saying vegetable.
Wow. Thank you so much for this Kung Fu class about terminology.
Yeah, the
And
deep
it's
dive.
I love about that because many people nowadays they just thinking about applications, they forget about the whole concept behind the technique and how important it is for you to understand the form. I normally tell the students like, you know what the name of the forms, the movements, in Tai Chi we have when we're doing the forms, you're actually reciting a poem through movements and has, if you tell, oh, this is just a brush push or whatever you want to call brush push. Why am I reposting the monkey or whatever you're gonna be like? But when you get the thing, the poem, and then you start reading, and you make things start making sense. And again, it's impressive how you have a deeper philosophy and an understanding behind every single movement, strike, or even the hei gongs or the qi gongs, whatever you want to call. Also has its purpose as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think honestly, like that's something that at this point in my life too, just kind of developing an understanding for has been really important, as well as to look more towards like the qigong. In Choy Li Fut, they have the Lohan qigong, and then just the things that were always kind of perpetuated on the Tai Chi side as well, like the 8 brocades and some other qigong exercises. But I think that's also when you go in with the mindset of training traditional Chinese martial arts, it's a little more easy to be open-minded and receive that kind of training on top of it. Whether or not, like when I was young and I first learned it, it didn't mean much to me. But now as I get older, I'm really feeling and seeing the benefits of consistent training in Qigong.
And another thing that is also impressive, it's how the same techniques through the years inside of the martial artist evolves in a sense not only into physical application but in understanding. Like as you mentioned, when you first practiced the technique, it didn't make any sense. The name, maybe it didn't even make any sense the application, but through the years, nowadays, you said recently after 20 something years practicing, whoa, so this is the meaning, this is the point. Just one technique, imagine the whole form, imagine the whole system. If you go deeper into my great grandmaster, he used to say one life it's not enough for us to practice kung fu, there's too much knowledge in there.
It's 100%. It's true.
What brought you inspiration to actually write the book, or what was your thoughts or the idea when you were like, okay, so let me do this and spread some of my, I love it, how people, I always tell my instructors and friends, that it's nice to share knowledge, to share inspiration, through the world.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. I think it goes back to me being on YouTube. It goes back to me writing articles. I know when I started working for my Qigong, and he started encouraging me to write. So he was telling me, and for years I didn't do anything. And I watched him write articles and columns that would go into Inside Kung Fu magazine. And finally, there was something that just clicked, and I started writing. And at that point, it was kind of like, what do I write about? Because when we're on YouTube and when we're making videos, we can explain certain things. It's not the most best representation, like nothing beats being in person and working in real time, getting feedback physically, being able to just look and change your own angle and being able to stop and ask questions. But having videos is a nice way to see things in movement. But what can be better explained when somebody's going to actually sit down and read, and you look at theory behind things, or you share exercises. And that's what I wanted to do back then. And unfortunately, after my first article in Inside Kung Fu magazine, they stopped printing. They went out of I want to say they went out of business. Inside Kung Fu went out of business. They stopped their publication. But luckily, there was still Kung Fu Tai Chi magazine, and I contacted them, and that led to me getting I would consider my mentor in writing. So I had Grandmaster encouraging me and pushing me to write, but then I had the guidance of Gene Ching. He was the assistant editor and eventually became the editor over there. And he would give me pointers. Every time I'd submit an article, he would mention something. And there were even a couple of times he requested. And it kind of made me think like, oh yeah, this would be a great way to look into writing something. Like I never considered this as a topic. And then of course, years go by down the road, and I moved here. And I actually, in the very beginning, I was doing a lot of traveling within the country. And so I would have 4 hours at a time on a train, and I had a lot of just sitting down time, and I thought I'd start writing articles again, and it led into ideas of maybe I should go into a book. So I kind of mapped out and had some ideas, but this particular book, the kicking and sweeping techniques, it's called just Choy Lee Fut Kicking and Sweeping Techniques. Very, very fancy name. It really hooks you. I just wanted to be straightforward with it, but basically, that one came from a Patreon topic, actually, of all things. I have a Patreon, and I do things separate than my YouTube channel. Sometimes I go a little bit more in depth on things. And I was looking through my notes, and I had some notes, and I thought it was a cool topic for videos to go over the different kicks in Choy Lee Fut. And it ended up being 2 really long videos. And I was like, wow, this is a lot of information. And this is something that I could probably share with the rest of the Choy Lee Fut world. I think they would be interested in it. And I always think back to like, what would I have wanted when I was younger? What would I look for? And that's what I do for a lot of the videos too for YouTube, is I think, what would I have wanted? Like all of these things, I was scouring the internet and looking through libraries because it was just so, in the beginning of things, I couldn't find much about Kung Fu, and you'd see just all these movies, and you'd try to pick things up from there, and then whatever you could find. So I thought it would be a great collection and explanation. And then after just listing out the kicks, and I was like, well, there's combat applications beyond what I consider, or what I would call like a textbook or traditional application. So it's not just like, you have to do this style of block, and then you have to do this style of control and parry, and then you can do the kick. But how would you use this in combat sports when you're dealing with not fully committed punches or kicks, or how do you set it up? And this was experience that I gained over the years in teaching classes and teaching sparring class, and being able to work with people all the time and look at those connections. That was something I was always doing in teaching. Like, even though we have gloves on, we can still use this one to scoop rather than try to like grab and hold on to somebody. And I thought that was a great way to talk about it in the book as well. And then I thought, there's a lot of extra concepts that I've picked up from forms training too, concepts and theories and tactics. And I thought, all right, this is a great way for me to just share my ideas. So in the book, there's like a good chunk of the book is a lot of theory and explanation of using footwork and using traditional stances to develop your actual combat stances that are going to be higher up and more mobile and things like that. I wanted to keep it as practical as possible. And that's kind of how it started and went. And it's funny because as big as it is, there's still so much more that I could talk about those kicks. So it's been, and it's had a great reception. So this is something that maybe it's kind of pushed me into maybe looking towards writing about the hand techniques in Choy Lee Fut in the same manner. So,
wow. Just a very quick question. Would you say that into Choy Lee Fut, there's more hand techniques than into kicks, or maybe that would be approximately the same?
Way more hand techniques. So the kicks, the kicks is like what's that?
You probably have a work of 5 books in there just for
Oh
for
my,
the for the heads.
I know, and that's what I've been kind of like thinking about. It's like, oh man, how am I going to give this the depth that I want to give this? Talking about angle and positioning and combinations and setting it up and where to have the correct power, the timing for the power and all the mechanics behind it. Like this is going to be a lot of work. I mean, for sure. When you look at forms in Choy Li Fut, even with like there's one form that is an exception, and that would be the horse form. And that was something I actually had heard about before I wrote the book, but I actually learned the form after writing and after publishing the book. So my little statement about the horse form in there, it was from what I had heard. I had asked my Sigong, like, what's this form? How's it going? And he said, there's kicks and stuff in it. But I didn't realize until learning that form that is like almost the majority of the form is kicking. It's more kicks than punches in that single form. But the rest of the art, you look at even like the continuous dual kicking form, and it is still like at most a 60-40 split. Everything else, you get like one or two kicks in a form, and the rest is hand techniques. So it's a very, very hand-centric art, hand strike-centric art. So within that, there's like so many different hand positions and so many different ways to attack with the hands that it's definitely going to be a lot of work.
But one thing is it's nice because doing that. How many times I was reading a book, even from different styles. I love reading. I love collecting. I love gathering information, and every information is useful. Sometimes there's different styles, they correlate, sometimes not, but just having information in the back of your mind is really good. And the way that you're impacting other people's readers like me, other martial artists around the world, it's beautiful. And again, thank you so much for
Awesome.
making for spreading the word of kung fu and promoting with excellency.
Yeah, I mean, and that's it in the end of the day too, because people are only going to have so much access to the art, regardless of if they want to learn Choy Li Fut and they have, like, say, the books or they have videos that they can follow along. Maybe they don't have access to an instructor. And what I can say to anybody that's interested is like, just go in and train. Doesn't matter the art, because there's so much more that you can learn in a single session, just one-on-one training with somebody, than you could through stacks of books and videos, because it's just so it's a physical art. You have to experience it, and there's no way that you can read about hitting a pad and then be able to do it with explosive power unless you have prior training. And so, like, for the community in the greater community, I hope that my material is always just an inspiration to get out and train and to build each other up. There's no need to go into this and say, well, only Choy Li Fut has the best kicks or the best punches or the best power. It's all styles have so much to offer. And it's one of those things. I have a huge library too. Like, I collected books so long, the old, like, the Chinese training manuals and the, like, wushu books and stuff, as well as just all different types of martial arts: Japanese martial arts, Chinese martial arts, Korean, obscure arts too. Like, it's just fascinates me. So yeah, I just hope I can give other people that same bug.
That's amazing. Talking about the techniques, right? We were talking about kicks and punch. Are there any misconcept other than the circular and all? Thinking that only Cholified circular. Of course, there's many different concepts. There's straight circular up. There's three levels: high, medium, and low techniques and targets. Do you think there's any other misconcepts about Cholifa that are frequently encountered, and how do you address normally those misunderstandings?
Well, I would say that there's a couple of things that are common misunderstandings, but at the same time, you could look at it as just evolutions of the art in real time. Like, we're watching
Hmm.
the art change, and it's because of the access that we have to so many other versions and styles of martial arts, that we can that the art tends to start to evolve in different directions. And a couple of the things that I've seen lately have been people trying to change up movements based off of their combat applications. So to completely change a movement, to change the range of the movement, to change the shape of the movement, just because if you want to do that to fit your understanding. That's one thing if you're teaching techniques or if you're teaching it like for fighting and sparring, but if you're starting to change the form and you're starting to make the form that way around, then the art itself is changing. I mean, it's a given that way. And sometimes it comes from somebody's experience, and typically maybe if they have different martial arts background, they start involving that in it, or they just have a limited experience of application. They don't fully understand the movement, and it's difficult. There's no specific application for specific movements. It's usually just looking at target areas. There's looking at certain aspects of it, but there's nothing where like all Choy Li Fut people know that this movement is used only for this or only for this or only for this. There's so much availability to do the movement in different ways that sometimes people will just only look at their own rather than try to explore different variations of it. That's one thing. The other thing that I found is that there's been such an emphasis now for Chinese martial arts, especially forms based. They want to try to, like if they go to tournaments, open tournaments and stuff, they see more performance-based arts, and they try to emulate those. So when you take Choy Li Fut and there's definitely like big swinging motions, but it's not going to be done the same way as you would do it in wushu. And everybody loves the performance value of wushu. So now I'm starting to see a lot of Choy Li Fut turn into wushu because they make the circles bigger, but at the expense of particular connection points. So and things like turning the head while striking, and this is something I've seen happen more recently with the wushu explosion, is that rather than looking at your target when you're striking it, you're turning your head to, I don't know, emphasize things. And I know that's something that they do specifically in wushu, but it's not something I've ever seen in Choy Li Fut until just recently. It's starting to like bleed over into that. And I think that's kind of where I'm seeing the art deviate. But at the same time, like I said, it's an evolution. We're watching in real time the evolution of this art. And those are two extreme versions of it. There are things that people will benefit by looking outside the art, but once it starts to change, then you have an issue. But it really, I think some of the most beautiful things of Choy Li Fut have been kind of, they're within the movements, whether you know it or not. You're using waist rotation, you're using explosive power, you're emphasizing good foot position and good posture and good body mechanics.
So, what's your vision for the future in Choy Li Fut? So, do you think, as you mentioned, the evolution, or I don't like to say the misconcept, because arts, they always evolve through new things, especially with the technology that we have nowadays. Back in the days, we didn't have that much um, source of teaching online. Now after the pandemic, everybody had to make a way to living, and they had to adapt the martial arts into a way. And then we saw that actually really is really good. You still can teach, you still can do things differently online. Of course, never is going to substitute a person instructor, but you still can help and continue make the art grows. So what is your vision of Choy Li Fut? Do you think, maybe in 100 years, it's Choy Li Fut is going to keep the same essence, but in a sense, it's going to be a lot of different from what we have right now?
Yeah, for sure. I think it will be different. I think it has more potential to push towards going into a direction towards wushu. And I think this because that's when you have a forms based art, you're going to try to emulate other forms based arts. And the standardization that's happening in wushu makes it so that everybody does more or less the same things. So I think it most likely will go in that direction. No matter what, there's always going to be people that are seeking the combat side of things. But I think you're going to find, similar to what's happened to Tai Chi, is that although it's a martial art and there's people that love the roots of the combat side of things and the training benefits of doing it in a combat sense, nowadays it's more pushed and learned for the health benefits of it. So I think it's going to end up being something like that, where you're going to have more emphasis just on demonstration value and forms presentation, and you will have people that will kind of be pushing to, smaller groups that are going to be pushing for the practical side. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's fine, because it does if it can have a definition rather than separation, then that's good. It will continue on. I think if you have too much division between the art, that's when things are just going to end up kind of splitting off and then fading out. And so, I mean, that's like looking way ahead. I would love to see the art appreciated for its training value. I think the forms are great. I love forms. Like how you can't love this art without having to without enjoying forms. There's just too many. But I think when people get a better understanding of what makes Choy Li Fut so strong and not just in combat, because there's a lot more outside of that. The combat has to adapt. It has to have some more tactics and theory behind it for it to perpetuate and to be as, I would say, as respected or as applicable in combat sports, because there's so many things that you're not going to need to do in combat sports that you'd be practicing in Choy Li Fut as is. So there would either have to be a deviation to where it's just purely a focus on fighting like that. But honestly, I would love to see that people would see the training value in it, because I think more than anything else, it stands out for its body mechanics and its power generation. And whether or not you want to work on it for forms, better power means better looking forms. Better power is good for combat. So it'd be nice to see that, and that's where I'm hopeful for. That's kind of where I'm pushing. That's why I'm writing books about kicking techniques or punching techniques, and not just writing a book about how to do a form. And I'm not against that. Maybe that'll come out at some point, but I want to try to share what I found, really behind the scenes of Choy Li Fut.
That's impressive. So now we spoke about different times. Let's talk a little bit about different societies. What is your thought on the current state of traditional martial arts in Europe compared to what you have seen and experiment in America? Like, I come from Brazil, so I see that it's very different, the way that they see. There's some pros and cons, aspects, United States and Brazil. So what would you think about Europe and in America or United States?
Yeah, I mean, I would say so. Unfortunately, I haven't had as much exposure as I've wanted to go around Europe and network and see things. Unfortunately, the pandemic kind of held that stuff back. But I think one of the things that I did notice, especially here in country, is their traditional Chinese martial arts is alive and well, and there is a different variety of styles than what you see in the United States. And there is a very good amount of schools that are very grounded in combat, and they really push the fighting side of things. So it's been pretty good to see that that there's that there's people that know how to hit things and each other. As far as the other side of the art that continues from there, I guess I haven't seen enough to really have a good perspective on this. But other than seeing that there are a lot of schools, and the ones that I have visited, there have been some very, very skilled practitioners. So luckily, I was able to go and teach some seminars in a school in Basel, and the school owner there, they teach Tian Shan Pai, Wing Chun, and I want to say Wushu as well. And they have these three arts that they teach there, and they have a good mix. And they were able to bring in a bunch of different martial artists from around Europe for these seminars that I was also teaching at. So I got to meet some people there, and I met some guys from Wudang, and that was cool because I know in the Bay Area. Actually, you if you haven't met him already, you should go meet Sifu David Wei from Wudan West. He's over in Oakland, but it's definitely worth meeting him. He's a very interesting. He has such a cool history in Wudan, and as well as these guys too. They know him very well, and just meeting them, like a couple of them, the Shadow Twins, they go by as they're in Ukraine, and then Ismet Himmet is in Germany, and he also is pretty high up with the Wudan school, and he teaches a lot out there as well, actually, in China, and it was cool to meet with them. It was cool to meet the school owners here, and to meet the Honggar community here has been really interesting. So there's a really solid community, and yeah, I think out here you also have a ton of Wing Chun schools and a lot of Wing Chun influence out in Europe, and then there are some smaller styles that I had never heard of. Again, from you're looking from the just people moving out of China and a lot of Hakka styles that kind of came over this way. So that's been neat to see. Coming from San Francisco, I knew that it wasn't going to be as concentrated as it was there, but and then also, I mean, the Bay Area has like a very strong community of Choy Lee Fut in particular. There's a lot of Choy Lee Fut schools out there. So, I kind of expected there wouldn't be as many out here, but yeah, it's hard to say, other than from what I've seen, and traditional martial arts are strong, and it looks like everybody's really perpetuating things, and it's nice to see it. It's nice to see that there's community building and there's tournaments here, and everybody goes to them. It's good.
Nice. It's nice to see that the Chinese martial arts community, it's united and get together, to promote and to help to spread art. I think it was Sunday. I spoke with I recorded an episode in Portuguese with Sifu William. He's living in York in United Kingdom, and it's very interesting how things are a little bit different. Like it's at least on his state or where he's at, he doesn't see much. But he's going to France constantly to practice under Sifu Barbary from Pak Mei, which is his currently Sifu. And it's funny because he was telling me, that in France, it's people are very very serious about martial arts and traditional styles. They're there's a lot of good representatives. So there's very famous. We have Sifu Kolosi that recorded the Sifu game. We have Sifu de Bedar been doing an incredible work with promoting Wing Chun, Sifu Barbary from Pak Mei as well. Pak Mei been growing a lot this style now. Recently, I believe it's because of the game as well and good representatives
It's
out
been
there.
helpful.
Exactly. And he was telling me there was a little bit, at least on his state where he's at in his province, it's hard. You see a little bit of everything. Style schools that teach mix a bunch of modern martial arts with traditional kind of thing, but it's a little bit different from United States. I feel that at least comparison from United States to Brazil, in my perspective, with all my respect to South America, but I feel that Americans are very into tradition, are very into knowing the system, knowing the history. I have very good friends, Hong Kyung from Brazil, Choy Lee Fut from Brazil, that very good on point. But you also have a lot of people that unfortunately just get about applications. I know that our society, modern society, kids, normally teenagers, youth, they just want to fight. That's how I got into it. I was like, I want to look like Bruce Lee. I want to do all those kicks, all those jumps, and it looks really scary. It look, me. But at the end of the day, the art, it's more than that. As you said, like when you started, you have one perspective about kung fu. Nowadays, your perspective is like an iceberg. We only look the tip of the iceberg about learning how to fight. But nowadays, you look at yourself. You're writing books, you're writing articles, doing so many videos on YouTube. Influencing so many people about martial arts, and yeah, it's impressive how different societies and countries and continents they have different perspective about traditional martial arts. How do you stay motivated to continue and promoting and improving the skills of practitioner? I mean, let me rephrase. How do you stay motivated and continue to improve your skills and practitioners and teachers? And what would be maybe an advice that you give to people who are starting into martial arts?
Wow. Yeah. So what? I think what keeps me motivated is I feel like from the amount of the art that I've learned, and then with having, I guess, somewhat established, on YouTube, and having a chance to share the art and share the variety of things that are in the art, I feel like that's something I want to do as much as possible, is to share as much as possible. I think there's something interesting about every form. I think there's something interesting about all the individual strikes and everything like that. So to show it, I have to try to, I want to make sure I'm at my best to show it. So that keeps me going, and I just love it. I can't picture my life without it. I'm always moving. I'm always thinking of Kung Fu. I'm always thinking of martial arts. And and I know during this whole thing, I've been saying a lot about Choy Lee Fut, but my mind is just as much in Tai Chi too. So I'm constantly thinking about, different Tai Chi techniques and different Tai Chi forms and applications and energy, and looking at similarities and differences and things like that. And it's just this constant, like, I want to know more about it. And I feel like part of it is just doing as much of it as possible, getting more familiar with the technique and the movements, and finding depth within that. And then as well, just sharing, because I know not everybody has that opportunity to, whether they just don't have access to a teacher, or maybe in that particular school, they haven't had a chance to learn this particular form or that particular form, or just having, motivation for people that are learning certain forms. And I think that's something, it's funny, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, and I didn't mention it then, I didn't think to, and now it just kind of brought it back up, is that when I make like forms demonstration videos, I try to show it in a more cinematic way. And I have a background, like, I thought actually, if I wasn't going to go into martial arts as a career, it probably would have been video production. It was just something I love to do. I love to make videos. I love to make, I make stupid sketch videos with my friends. We'd make our own short little movies and things. I love doing that. So I was able to, basically combine the two and share my martial arts experience and use my videography background and that, and editing background. And so especially like the forms videos, that was the original thing for me, is I wanted to just show forms and make them look cool. Like, I wanted them to look like a movie, so, and that's something I'd still continue, even if I'm not doing tutorials or lessons. I try to do those videos when I can. And in those more recently, I've been sharing like training things to do with the forms, but I've done beginner forms and intermediate level forms and advanced level forms, because I want things for people not only to be like, wow, I can't wait until I get to learn that down, 10 years down the road. But when a beginner is like, I'm working on that form right now. Oh man, I should, maybe I should try to do this timing on my form. Maybe, I should work on this to go faster, or, give them some motivation to up their game as well. So that's something, I've been trying to do to kind of, that keeps me motivated to share that, and then also to share that motivation. And as far as advice for beginners in the art is, do not be afraid to make mistakes on things. We oftentimes underestimate our skill and ability as far as where we think we should be with our instructors. And I'm not saying this goes for everybody, but I have had students that from time to time, I will tell them as their instructor, hey, let's get you ready to test. You're ready to move on to the next level. And they say, well, no, it's not perfect yet. And it's like, it's okay. For where you're at, this is a good level. And I guess with that, speak to your instructors, talk to them, ask them how you can improve your martial art. And then when they tell you, do it. So don't just end like, hey, what do I need to do now? And your instructor tells you like, do lower stances. And you're like, okay, that's cool. And then never do it. You still have to put in the work and do it. And then of course, do your homework. This is something I would teach even to my youngest children, the 4-year-old kids in class. I would tell them how to practice at home. I think that's one thing a lot of instructors don't teach people is how to practice. It's not just try to go home and mimic what you did in class. It doesn't have to be like that. It doesn't have to be crazy. If you don't know what to do, then yeah, think about a drill or something that happened in class, an exercise that you guys did, and do it at home. But if you're working on forms, do your form every day. That's, I mean, as simple as that sounds, that's huge advice. Because every time you do it, your body is going to have a chance to sleep on it. Your nervous system is going to be able to pick it up and be prepared. This is how you develop that muscle memory. So even if you only know 5 steps in the form, do those 5 steps. And if you're ready, if you have the time, do it 5 times in a row, 10 times in a row. If you want to do it for a workout, set a timer and then just keep doing it, 15, 20 minutes, that's fine. But do the movements every day. Do your homework. Later on, when you're more advanced, you'll have to be more strategic about what you practice, especially in a forms-based system. I know for me, I cannot do every single form every day. There's no way. I don't have the time to do it. But I look at it in huge chunks. And time-wise, some forms take longer than others. I know that, so I kind of split things up. But I figure, I can do 10 forms, these 10 forms today. I can do another 10 forms tomorrow. I can do another 10 forms tomorrow. And that gets my workout in. I refresh everything. And then if I'm working on a form in that particular time, I'll devote a good chunk of time to work on that. And this is something as you move later on, like you're going to hit that form, then you're only focusing on that. And then you're going to start mixing up and forgetting older stuff. So a good way to structure that is practice your new material and then still practice small chunks of your older material. You should review everything you do at least once a week. So whether you're practicing a single form a day, or if you're going to do 3 forms of your, 3 beginner forms, and then you work on the form that you're focusing on, and then the next day, 3 intermediate level forms, and then the form you're working on, you're still breaking it up and making sure that you do that. And your body is doing the art, and that's the most important thing. Your body is getting fluent in the movement. So it doesn't have to be a 2-hour training session, but do a little bit every day.
Nice, that's amazing, Sifu. Just one last thing. Just want to thank, as I remember when I was learning the Miao Dao, first thing that went, I was to look into, I went to look it online. I want to get my my Miao Dao sword, and first thing that I find your video. I found that video. You're doing that at the close to a blossom tree. I was like, wow, that's so cool. So I was like, what size should I get? What kind should I get? I remember that I even visited the website that you mentioned, but I believe they only are shipped to Europe, if I'm not mistaken. But I ended up getting a really nice one, which is right here.
Hey,
But
yeah,
anyway,
nice.
yeah, I got that was really nice. I was like, oh yeah. But again, thank you so much, Sifu, for your time. Thank you very much for your for inspiring so many people like me, like so many other martial artists, through these years, and representing martial arts with quality, with excellence, and for being part of this show. Thank you so much. I just want to leave you a few minutes so you can promote. Let me know also if your book is on Amazon, so I can also add on this on the description of this video, and also all the links how to find you in the social media. Please feel free to share.
All right, so I am pretty much across almost all social media, and not everything I'm very good at. So if you follow me on one and you don't hear much of a response, or you don't see me posting, I'm trying, I'm just not good at it. But I am always on YouTube and Instagram, somewhat on Facebook, and then some of the other social apps I've been kind of dabbling with. But you can find everything about that, me, the books, all of that on my website, and that's www.sifukuttel.com, and that's Kuttel. And I have everything there, and you can see all sorts of things about Choy Lee Fut, Tai Chi, and schools that I'm associated with, my history and my teacher, my Sifu Jason Wong and his father, my Sigong Bak Fai Wong as well. My book is on Amazon. Actually, I have two books that have the Choy Lee Fut kicking and sweeping techniques, and I have another book called Monkey Movement, and it's more or less the extra things that you can do for monkey style. So it's definitely not as in-depth as the kicking book, but if you're interested in learning things like how to do the monkey run and the pop-up or the leg flower on the ground, the more acrobatic things, those are in the book, or those are in that book. So, and more books to come. I have, like we've been talking about. I got to do that.
That's great. That's great, Sifu. Thank you so much for your time one more time. Thank you for being part of this show, and I'm definitely gonna bother you again in the future for a next episode, so we can get deep into maybe in the future books or maybe into specific topics and discuss a little bit more. Thank you so much for your time.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you.
And thank you, my audience, for watching this episode again. If you're listening through Spotify, make sure you go on YouTube, and then there's gonna be the link of the description, and the links will be in the description of this video, so you guys can check it out. Sifu Kuttel information, and thank you very much. You guys have a wonderful day. Bye bye.